allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. It's December 9th. Start with a roll call, please.
Did you want to welcome our newest member before I
Yes.
call that roll?
Yeah.
Newest member.
We can officially welcome back Tim Mills from military leave. Tim, if you've got anything that you'd like to say.
Yeah, first of all, Donna, if you would join me in standing here. I don't know if you guys know the story, but I was at the Senior Officer Legal Orientation course, which was in Charleston, Virginia. And at that course, I found out that I was not allowed to serve on a board while on military orders of 280 days or more. Well, I was on orders for 440 days. And those ended today. And so what happened as a result of that is I had to call MAC and say, hey, I'm not going to be able to join in any more meetings. Now, fortunately, I got to be part of the superintendent selection process before I figured that out. But I did not want to be in violation. He asked me, do you have any recommendations? And I said, well, Donna Kramer seems like the best person to serve in my stead if she would be willing. And so your willingness, I greatly appreciate, because you had the experience with the new building project, a lot of the things that we were going through, a lot of the issues that we've been discussing, and so I greatly appreciate you filling in for me. And as part of that, this is the baton. So as a battalion commander, and for anybody who's wondering about my fiduciary responsibility, I want to make sure I'm crystal clear, I paid for these, Sergeant Major and I paid for these with our own money, so I am at liberty to present this to you as a civilian, and perfectly within the law, and the limits of the law. I also learned that at the Senior Officer Legal Orientation course. So, Donna, on behalf of me as a battalion commander, thank you for serving in my stead.
You're very welcome.
I'm very
You're
grateful.
welcome.
And that's
Thank
just
you.
a note from
All
me to
right.
you.
Thank you, Tim. Well, it was great.
It was great. Thank you very much. And I hear you're relieved of your position.
I am.
This
She's like, I can't
Maybe
get
you
over
have
it.
some final words to say.
Well, actually, I do. And so, first of all, I want to thank our new superintendent. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I wasn't on the hiring process, but I think they did a great job of choosing a new superintendent. So I commend all of you for your fine work. And I know that you're all kind of sick of me in my teacher hat and everything, but I have to do it just one more time. So you just have to bear with me for just a few moments. But yeah, I really appreciate the fact that I think everyone is pretty dedicated here to trying to make this a good place for people to teach. And I think you're all cognizant of the fact of how hard the job is right now and how hard people work. And it's difficult to do a job when people are over you or making rules that have never taught school. And so they don't really understand all of the ramifications of what goes into planning a lesson, planning a curriculum, and to make blanket rules for things you don't really know about is hard. Just like I'm sure Ryan doesn't like someone telling him how to be a doctor. And so I guess I want the professionalism of the teachers to be respected, that they do make decisions. They follow the curriculum. They have guidelines they have to follow. When they choose books, they have people they have staff readers, they have community readers. Before any book or anything is adopted, it goes through a process. And so I think that process needs to be respected for what it is, for the professionals that are doing it. And I guess my last comment is this. If in your life, if you have ever done anything that you weren't proud of, or that you thought, gosh, I wish I hadn't done that, it's kind of the same thing in a book. Sometimes you read a paragraph or a sentence and you go, I kind of wish that wasn't a book, that's not very good. But Is that but what is that in the context? Just think of a book as a context of your life. Do you want to be remembered for the one or two things you're not very proud of? Or do you want to be remembered for all the things that you did in the context of your whole life? Because I know I've done lots of things I'm not very proud of, but I don't want to be remembered for that. And I guess when you're looking at books or people or anyone, please always remember that you don't want to fall to sensationalism and things that are just, people are just trying to get at you, to get a reaction. Just, I hope that you'll all be really thoughtful and think of things in a context of that they're in, not just a flash in the pan or a wild statement on Facebook or anything, because really the teachers in this district deserve that kind of professionalism from everyone. So anyway, thank you. I've enjoyed all of you very much. So anyway, welcome back.
Thank you, Donna.
Thanks for coming back, Jim.
Thanks again, Don.
Yep, you're welcome. And thanks. I'm legal to have this, right?
Yes.
All legal.
You are. You are not going to get in trouble.
I just had to get on my phone.
So with that, I'll call the roll. Mac Rankin.
Here.
Ed Metzger. That's perhaps a little later. Rob Keller.
Here.
Eric Christensen.
Here.
Jim Mills.
Here.
Ryan Worley.
Here.
Sue Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan.
All right, everyone is here. The next item is good news and board member reports. As always, our good news is shared online on the social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and X, as well as on the school district's website. Anything that you have to add?
I do not have anything to add this one.
Okay. Any board member reports?
Some of us went down to the Iowa School Board Association annual meeting in November and had an opportunity just to kind of learn what other school districts are doing with some of the hot topics of mental health and safety and cell phones and stuff like that. So we're kind of excited to come back and just brainstorm and see how some of that reaches the goals and some of the actions that we want to do. So that was a lot of learning. I attended Finance 101 for the 6th year in a row. Maybe it'll sink in. No, I'm learning. But that's always a nice time to be able to talk to other board members and then to talk just to see what other school districts are doing. And some of them are doing some really neat things and to see where Indianola is, right? I think where we want to be, right? The mix of kind of what we have going on. We had a lot of awesome success with our fall sports this year, and then I was able to go to the Little Hawkeye Honor Choir concert, and that was fun. So, and I just want to make sure that everyone knows about some of these winter concerts coming up here. I know there's an elementary one tonight, but I know we've had a lot of community members ask when our kids are in performance and stuff, so if anyone has a chance to go out and see those concerts, they start this week. I know I'll be in the auditorium 3 days next week, so at some point. So no, I'm just that conference up there and just everything we have going on. Just we're really lucky to be part of Indianola, and so that was really nice to be among other schools and other board members and. Watching them talk to us about what they've heard and good things they have heard about Indianola as far as policies we have going on and instructional stuff we're doing and safety and all that stuff. So that's all I got.
Anyone else? Okay. Like Sue said, we were able to attend the association conference a couple weeks ago. Eric joined Finance 201. What else did you go to, Eric?
Went to a session on cell phones and on school performance. The cell phone presentation was pretty interesting. They had presenters there from Dallas Center Grimes, and then from there's a shared superintendent with North and South team. So they had both board members and superintendents there, but one of the parts that was interesting to me is that there was really not much pushback from parents. They were all pretty supportive of that. It decreased behavior issues in the classroom. It decreased behavior issues outside of the classroom, and they had a lot more just focus, and they kind of learned how to talk to their classmates again there. So it just seemed like all around a pretty positive thing that they had experienced there, with some clearer rules, of course. But no, it was very interesting. So that was probably the highlight of the conference for me.
What did that look like? Did they not allow them into the classroom at all, or they
So,
didn't have them out?
I think they were similar. Dallas Center Grimes, their policy was during class there was absolutely no cell phone usage. Between classes and at lunch, they could use their cell phones if they wanted to. First offense, there was no gray area. If you're caught using your cell phone, it was an automatic trip to the office. First offense was a trip to the office, turn in your phone, and you pick it up at the end of the day. Second offense, trip to the office, your parent has to come in and pick up the phone at the end of the day. And third offense was same as second offense, but also an in-school suspension. And I think, the student body, I'm trying to think, was it maybe 1,200 high school students? Does that seem reasonable? But I think first offenses, they maybe had 250, second offenses, they had 30, and third offenses, they had like 5 or 10. So the students got the message pretty clearly. So, but yeah, just all around a pretty good message, pretty good experience. So I think there are models out there that we could draw on if we chose to go down that path.
I have heard that's going to be a big push at the legislature this year too, so.
I was fortunate enough to sit through Finance 201 and 301 for the first time on each of those. I didn't have to retake them. Very, very good information. A lot of people don't understand the way that school finance is set up and how just because we have funds in one specific designated silo doesn't mean that we can move it and use it somewhere else. And the complexity is almost a little bit insane when you look at it. But I am a whole lot more comfortable with being able to try to explain that to someone at the grocery store. So please, if you see me at the grocery store, don't stop and ask me questions about finance. But it was really good. In addition to that, on Friday, I attended the board president workshop where we spent a pretty significant amount of time discussing superintendent evaluations as well as areas that districts were struggling in. So whether it was hiring, finances, really just kind of sat around tables and talked through what that looked like and shared ideas with each other on what maybe we were doing differently. And Mrs. Paul was a presenter at the superintendent evaluation portion of the morning. And we kind of got to speak through how we did her 90-day evaluation here. And I did lay that on everyone's tables for you guys to look at. But before I move on to that, I do want to challenge each of you to consider blocking off your calendars for next year's association conference now and trying to make it a point to go to this. We've all taken the step and the commitment to move the district forward and to become board members. And the information that is presented at that conference is very, very important from my perspective, in my opinion. And there are a lot of districts that bring their entire board. So I think we can talk about that more in the future as a board, but something for you guys to think about now is whether or not that's something that you think you could commit to for next year. So with that being said, I do have Mrs. Paul's 90-day evaluation laid there on your desk. I'm happy to answer any questions. Went through and took all of the feedback from our session, entered that in, went through and met with all of the cabinet and the principal level employees like you guys had requested, documented all of that in this for you, and have met with Mrs. Paul and discussed that with her. And she was so kind to be okay with me bringing this to you guys tonight. And we're going to work together on making sure that our board goals align strategically with what our superintendent's goals are, and continue the momentum forward that we have with her in this role, to make sure that we are doing our due diligence, our fiduciary duty, as Tim would say, to put our best foot forward and continue to serve our students and our staff the best that we can. So if you guys have any questions on that, happy to answer that now, or if you would like to ask questions later, I'm fine with that as well. So. Okay. One more chance. Any other board member reports? The next item is delegations, petitions, and communications.
We have not had anyone sign up to speak this evening.
Okay. Next item is the consent agenda.
Hold on.
Oh,
She's on the agenda for later, she's good.
you wanted to wait till the very end, right? Okay. We'll get you moved up in just a second.
I have a question on one of the consent agenda items.
Yes, on the really quick, before you ask your question, I think I'll answer it. On the number 7, the bus routes,
Okay.
Hillcrest has been opened up, and so the Transportation Department has updated the routes that were associated with Hillcrest. They've provided us with an updated list of all of our routes with correct timing. We did find that there was one address on one of the routes that needs to be updated as a clerical item, but the time does not.
So do we approve all those? Is that why it's in there?
Yep. The other question that you had asked earlier, Sue, was around one of the bills that's on the November bill synopsis in regards to a Topgolf activity that DECA had done, and that will flow through their
Resale accounts.
through their resale accounts. So
Which means they fundraised for it,
Correct.
and then that's how they have to bill it or whatever. Okay,
So
so,
it's still district funds, but it's set aside in what's called a resale account. So they fundraise, it goes into that resale account that they can use for their activities. That is actually an event that you're approving for them to do an outing at Topgolf for 50 students and 10 advisors, or 10 adults, chaperones and
so how come I've never heard of this resale? Or what you just said, account before?
Is it called an activity account?
Is that how we do that? Is that how prom does too? That's how all of it does it, is it comes out, but then the clubs have fundraised for it or whatever?
So when they do fundraiser cards, it goes into the
Gotcha.
resale or activity.
Okay.
Use interchange on resale or activity. It goes into that account. It's still district money, but it's raised for a specific purpose.
Gotcha. Okay. I actually have another question.
Okay.
And it's on the personnel, but it's more for Annette. So for Lacey and Jamie, those are those 2 positions, right?
Yes.
So then they will still maintain their normal duties as is?
Those are considered full release roles.
So what does that mean?
So they don't, they're not classroom teachers currently. Lacey will be added to the TLC program, Teacher Leadership and Compensation. Jamie is already an instructional coach, but her role is going to change.
So will Lacey will she still be a middle school counselor? No. So this difference of salary is what Okay, so when I first read that, I was like, oh, that's just an additional.
So she'll have a stipend on top of those duties that's being assigned to her because that's a leadership pathway position.
Okay, so then we will be looking to have to hire these positions in the fall.
It would be a middle school counselor position if that comes through HR to rehire that. But for Jamie's position as an instructional coach, there'll probably be discussions about needs within the district and how the TLC program can best address those.
Perfect. Awesome. No further questions.
Now I have a question because those are in the board packet. They're not on the printed version.
Top appointments, Lacey Jervis and Jamie Neal.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. I don't know where I was not
Do you
seeing
need
that.
these on top of?
I do. Sorry. Any other questions on the consent agenda? Entertain a motion.
Make motion we approve the consent agenda.
Motion made by Sue,
Second.
seconded by Eric. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. All right, presentations.
Obviously, it warms my heart to hear people going to Finance 101 and 201 and 301 and talking about fiduciary duty and the like. As Mr. Rankin was talking about, there are the different silos of funding and uses in school finance, and it can be a little bit convoluted with the aid and levy worksheet. But one of the more simpler silos to talk about tonight is the management fund levy, because I want to give you a little bit of a refresher on what that looks like for this school district and give you a reminder of what our opportunities are on that. First slide I have for you is just kind of a refresher of the friends from ISFIS had put together, kind of give you an idea of the different sources and different expenses that can come from different sources. Tonight we're talking particularly about the management fund. Management fund strictly property taxes, and it identifies some of the expenditures and regular school finance for every district. So revenue for the management fund comes from, and you can slip to the next one there, right, Ray. It's 100% property taxes, which is driven by the aid and levy worksheet, and most of you don't necessarily know what the aid and levy worksheet is or looks like, but you can see a snippet of what this part of it looks like where we identify our management fund levy. Most of the other sections, as you can see, we're on section 21 here where we're putting the money in for the management fund levy, and the other 20 sections are different calculations, first on coming to a combined district cost, essentially, budget authority, and then later on how to fund that. Then there's these categories down below, including, you can see on there, the regular PEPAL fund identification for property taxes as well, but the management fund is in here in line 21.1. So it's just a simple input at that time is how much money we're going to levy for taxes for the management fund. And you can see our levy history over about the last 5 years. And I'll talk about the uses that kind of drive the need for that levy. So when we take a look at the uses for the management fund, you can take a look at the first one we've got is our unemployment benefits liability. In the private sector, as you may be aware, there's an unemployment insurance trust fund that an average employer would pay into over time, and if they don't have experience from having employees or former employees collect on it, it draws from that fund and they'll have calculations and the like. With the governmental entities in Iowa, it's just strictly whatever cost is incurred, that's our unemployment liability, and so we'll get a bill and we'll pay it usually on a quarterly basis. The nice part in this district is that cost has been extremely low for us. Very few instances that we've had to pay unemployment insurance or unemployment payments, benefits to employees. Credit to, first of all, the employees we hire, but then secondarily, obviously, our employment processes, particularly regarding termination, to make sure that all of our T's are crossed and I's are dotted. The next category is liability insurance and judgments. This is the highest cost category. This is where you have property insurance and casualty insurance as well as workers' compensation. For this district, that runs about $950,000. This last renewal, we had quite a jump in the property part of it, but a great deal of it was offset by lower costs in the workers' comp area due to mostly how the law is set up in Iowa and has very favorable workers' comp rates. And a lot to do with our experience here in Indianola as well, again, which can go back to hiring good employees that are going to take safety very seriously, and then of course making sure that they have the training so that we don't have workers' comp claims. Next area is the insurance agreement areas. Now this is not employee benefits. This would be self-insuring other insurance agreements. For this district, that's where our breakdown insurance policy is held with security underwriters. And that's a benefit to the district because you have different items of equipment that may break down, and rather than saddling the general fund with those costs, we can charge it against that breakdown insurance policy and then get refunded for those costs. So there's premiums that we're paying for that insurance, and then those premiums come out of the management fund. There's also opportunities in there for risk pools, kind of a newer concept for public and government entities. One of the more common ones for school district is the natural gas risk pool, where you can essentially insure yourself against the ups and downs of natural gas, and you're paying a premium at the beginning of the year, and then throughout the year that's supposed to cover your natural gas costs, and if your costs would be higher, you wouldn't have to pay any more dollars. There's some benefits to that. It's a fairly new program, probably something the facilities committee will maybe finance committee will look at down the road to see if it's worth exploring for this district. Judgments, very infrequent, very rare. I'm not obviously new. I'm not necessarily aware of any judgments that the district have had to pay anytime recently. Early retirement benefits, you're somewhat familiar with this already from having an early retirement program in the past, and we talked about it this fall as well. And for those instances that we have early retirement plans, the idea of early is that they would have met 55 but not yet been qualifying for a normal retirement with IPERS. So it's considered an early retirement. The district can do that for budgetary purposes, and the costs of the package that you provide them would come out of the management fund. Then the last one they've got is mediation and arbitration costs. That's stuff that happens obviously through the collective bargaining process. I think in this district that's been pretty rare, and for a lot of districts it has been, and particularly over the last few years now, since a lot of negotiations are only driven strictly by base wages, and the arbitration amounts are limited by law as well, so don't incur many costs to that, and certainly not in this district as well. So that kind of summarizes the sources and uses of the management fund, but I'd open it to any questions you might have based on what we talked about.
Chad, what kind of rate increases have we seen on the property and casualty insurance over the last few years?
Yeah, so that's been a concern of what's been a big driver. I mean, you saw the numbers as far as what we've had to tax for that. When I look at it over the last 5 years, talking about a 65% increase in property and casualty along with workers' comp insurance, and it has been a battle every year. I mean, really, when 5 years ago it was a fairly soft market, but then as you have even derechos in Iowa, or you have other windstorms in Iowa, but you have Greenfield tornadoes, but then also nationwide you have hurricanes and the like that will end up causing spikes to property insurance rates, and we've seen that as well here, jumping from $675,000 about 5 years ago up to $950,000 now. So. Any more questions?
Thanks, Chad.
Very good, thank you.
Mrs. Ellis.
Hello, I'm here to give you an update on standards-based reporting. We've been working on this for the last 5 years, and so this is our first year that we have actually going to reporting of our scores. So when we first started out, our vision was to make sure that we had academic standards and preparing students for success globally, and making sure that our instruction was rigorous and also with collaborative learning. So our big focus is meeting the students' individual needs and maximizing teaching and learning within our school. So what does this look like now? When we score something on PowerSchool, when it goes over to the quarter grades or on Schoology, we're looking for 3 to 5 pieces of evidence or artifacts for each thing that is scored. You should be able to see the visible progression of student learning, so you might start with developing, but our goal is to be able to go from maybe developing to nearly secure to secure, and we support the students in that learning. Our redos and retakes now focus on learning versus, oh, how do I get that A? Now they look at it and say, hey, I'm at nearly secure, how can I become secure? And sometimes we even have that student that's secure wanting to know, how can I get enriched understanding? So this is kind of our current progress. So I kind of relate it to a game. I play basketball, volleyball, all those fun things. And we've been practicing for 5 years. Well, now we're in the game. And sometimes when you're in the game, that's when you start realizing how good was your practice. And so we're kind of in the trenches a little bit. Everything now is on Schoology, which is new for parents. Not new for the teachers or the students, but new for parents. And so we're trying to iron out some of those issues within Schoology. There's been a few hiccups with those. Our professional learning teams, this is kind of where it's, when those teachers get together, and they have to be consistent, everything has to be aligned now. And now we're looking at, does our instruction match the rigor of the standard? And so if we're going to provide evidence, then we need to make sure that it's matching the standard. And sometimes we had quizzes and things that we might have scored previously, but they really weren't what the standard is saying. It's good information. For example, you might read a novel, and you might want to know, did the students read the novel or do they have basic understanding? But that's not the rigor of the standard. So those are some of the conversations we are having now, because we have normally scored that with percents, and now it's like, oh wow, that does not even meet the standard. It's information we might need, just to help. It's kind of that formative type of assessment to help us drive our instruction, but not necessarily something that we can use as an artifact. So we have a lot of questions. We're looking at what's going well and what's working. And a lot of this, what do we need to improve on now? And really looking at those standards and saying, is this really what we want to score? Because like right now, we're in the game. So we're making adjustments as we go. So with parent communication, we started out in August. Allie and Celeste, we had 2 in-person information center sessions for parents. And then before school, we had 2 Schoology workshops. One was at 6th grade orientation, and then another one was at open house, where Allie, Celeste, Ray, and several other people were there able to help parents. At parent-teacher conferences, we had 2 in-person, one at the high school, one at the middle school. And then we had 2 virtual Schoology workshop sessions to help parents get onto Schoology and be able to show them how to work Schoology. It's been in the weekly newsletter, and thus we had quite a few bright arrow messages going out to parents saying, this is the place that you go for the information now. And then with that, we also have video tutorials out there for parents to be able to get on Schoology, be able to see the progress of their students. Unfortunately, Schoology does not link to PowerSchool. Most parents are used to PowerSchool. That's where they like to go. They can see their quarter grade now, but they're really not seeing the progress that the student is making necessarily, because it's all on Schoology. We're also very blessed to be able to have Dr. Matt Townsley. He works at UNI, and he is one of the big gurus into standards-based reporting. And he does all sorts of things across the nation, is one of the big leaders, and it has several books and stuff that we have used as resources for this. Well, we wrote a grant, and with that grant, we get him to help support us during this year. We've created a standards-based reporting committee that has instructional coaches, teachers, Annette, and then admin. And then with that committee, we have looked at what we have done. We've looked at our handbooks and things like that. And we did a needs assessment with our initial meeting with our teams and kind of said, where do we need to go? What do we want to do? And then this last November 8th, we actually identified gaps and made some new action plans, which kind of targeted our PD, our alignment of instruction and assessment with our standards. And with that, we've done some things like we looked at our language arts. We decided that we really need to have some conversations with language arts, so we were able to provide a half-day professional development with language arts. We provided half-day professional developments with our math teacher, 8th grade math teachers, that kind of talk about the algebra and the geometry and how we're going to score those. We do have follow-up virtual visits in January and February with Matt Townsley, so that has been just we are very fortunate to be able to have that support for our teachers as well as us as we're growing through this process. All right, that's kind of my update for standards-based reporting. No questions, right? No.
Are you getting any feedback from parents on how they feel about the process or just the practice itself?
No.
Okay.
I mean, you and I had conversations and stuff, but really with no parents, I really haven't had any.
What was the participation like with the parents for the in-school Schoolology workshops? Was that?
It was not as well attended as I would have liked. The two initial ones, we probably had about 50 or 60 parents. The Schoology workshops, we didn't have that many at all. Matter of fact, I don't know what the exact percentage of parents that are on Schoology, but it's not what I would hope it would be, considering that's where you go for your information. I still think parents are trying to use PowerSchool as a way for information, but I haven't had a lot of communication with parents. That's just what I think. So it's not as well attended as I'd hoped.
And then I have one more question for you. So you talked about professional development opportunities, and I'm just curious what you, from your perspective, what is one of the most beneficial professional development opportunities that the teachers have benefited from?
For standards-based reporting, I think one of the most important things that we can do right now is that instructional and assessment alignment to make sure that we are meeting that standard. And then also with that, our teachers are working really, really hard. And with that being said, I think we need to look at our standards, and they're scoring a lot. They're doing a lot more work than probably anticipated that they would be doing because of how many things they're trying to score at one time. So I just think that instruction alignment and that assessment alignment with scoring to help support the teachers, because I mean, for example, like a math teacher, they have one problem which they could score like 3 or 4 different things within that that problem. So,
Do we do it differently? Do we do it differently than other districts, or is it just?
no, we're following the process that other districts have done. Like Matt Townsley, we're using a lot of his processes and things like that.
Okay.
But I just
when you're
think-
talking about all the work, I'm like, is that common across teaching across the entire state, or is it unique
Yes.
because there's some
I would
process
say
that-
when you're grading an assessment, you're not grading for points now.
Yeah.
You're grading for how are those students doing with that particular,
Yep.
that standard. And a test could have multiple standards within it.
Yep. Okay. I'm tracking. the standards are state, standards developed by the state? Is
Yes,
that- Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Later in policy, you guys are going to hear a proposed revision to one of our policies, but in an effort to not make our presenters for that policy stay all night, both Mrs. Stanley and Mrs. Murillo are here to discuss therapy dogs as part of our daily routine in our building. Mrs. Paul was also very involved with that, so we got to hear this in policy last week, so.
Is this where I go?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about the therapy dog policy that I've been able to work with Brittany and Tara with beginning of this school year. And it kind of instigated from those of you that know me from the community. Our family are really big dog people, Labrador Retrievers to be exact. But we raise labs. As a hobby, we've had over 7 litters of puppies. My husband and myself, we train them for hunting. But we have one lab that is not much of the hunter, so she needed a different purpose in life. She didn't like the cold so much. And so at the beginning of the year, too, my girlfriends, they challenged me. They're like, "Hey, Corey, what's our passion projects going to be for this year?" And so that became my passion project, is therapy, how my dogs could serve a different purpose too, and therapy dog policy. And then it just became even more important to me because when the shooting at Perry happened, which we're coming up on that 1-year anniversary. And when that happened, a couple of teachers from that district, they created a therapy dog policy too. And so now 2 of those teachers in that district. And we're just seeing more and more districts throughout Iowa having this therapy dog policy that we have. And so the purpose of, as we have, second slide, that we kind of came up with is really to look at that overall for student success, looking at the well-being and academic success of our students by providing a therapy dogs within the school buildings and throughout their days to support them with those emotional, social, all the pieces that we're seeing more and more needs that students are needing. To start this whole process again, so kind of thought about it at the beginning of the year, and I kind of knew from doing some stalking from Tara, as I knew she would be coming and looking at the Estherville policy, I knew that she would be coming in, and she has a therapy dog. And so kind of waited for Tara to come in to see, hey, would she still be on board with this? Had some conversations with Tara. Then I came to find out that Brittany, through her old district, she had actually helped support the writing of her therapy dog policy for her district. So I had 2 great resources for a person that really didn't know where to go with this. And so beginning of the summer, I was able to, towards the end of the summer, I was able to have a conversation with Tara, and she helped guide me through what this process might look like. After talking to Tara, then we asked for input from the administration, like, would they even be interested in this? Would this be something that they'd be willing to have come into their buildings? And we were able to, with confidence, they were interested. Then I was able to go and I proposed, after they said, yeah, we'd be interested, then I came and proposed what this plan would possibly look like in their buildings. After that, then survey went out to district staff to gauge their interest, because administration was like, well, how many staff members are we talking about? And so we sent out a survey. That initial survey had 106 responses sent back, and I think I had like 60% were like, yes, want to do it, let's do it. So then I was like, well, let's hold off. Do they actually understand what it means to be a handler and what those certifications need to be? And so then another survey went out where I presented like, hey, here's the recommendations we're making. Of that, then it pulled back and we had 23 responses. And about half of those people then said, yes, I'd be interested in becoming a handler. So we have a representation at about each building that would be interested in becoming either a primary or secondary handler for a therapy dog and that. After that was sent out and kind of more that clarification among staff was taken, then a draft of the policy was brought to the school board, and I was, school board policy committee, and they were able to look at it and give me feedback last week on that. And then we're currently working on a handbook, because the policy, as you guys will see, is pretty general. And so we know that there's lots of logistics that still need to be worked through with administration in each building to make that be a seamless process to have those therapy dogs. So that was kind of the journey that we've been on so far. As we can see, kind of looking, there's many districts, like I said, are adopting therapy dog policies, and these are just a few around our area that has therapy dog policies for them. So when we're looking at a therapy dog, really taking a look at what is the definition of a therapy dog. So we are not talking about a service dog. A service dog is one that has been trained for a specific disability and has one primary handler. And they stick with that primary handler and really do not have to worry about other people. With a therapy dog, they're really looking at that psychological and physiological well-being of all individuals. And they're really looked at when they go through their certification and training, they're looked at that their temperament and how they react and how they get along with other people, and are taken through lots of different situations through their training to make sure that their temperament and that they would be suitable for lots of different environments. There have been so many different research studies brought out about the benefits of therapy dogs. In the classroom setting, it's been said to increase school attendance, enhance motivation, confidence levels of students. As we know, the anxiousness of students, anxiety is a huge one that continues to be a hot topic and seen a lot in our students. Development of better, stronger relationships, children learn ways to express their feelings, reduce that learner anxiety behaviors, and then there's all the social, emotional, and cognitive pieces that also go along with having therapy dogs in classrooms or in the school setting. When we're looking at our district therapy dog requirements, some of the pieces that we're looking at is to make sure that they're suitable for our school environments, is looking at annual obedience training, looking at AKC. AKC is American Kennel Club, which is a big organization, and so looking at that the handler has to be, and the dog has to be recognized by a therapy organization and have that membership through them. And that the school district needs to look at those organizations and make sure that they follow through with certification. Annual vaccinations, regular grooming would be a requirement. Building administration approval, so really the handler and the building administration will work together on that. Liability insurance coverage, I've been able to talk to Chad and to Scott Weinman and talk about the coverage that our school district would be able to provide for those that bring their therapy dogs to the school. And then also very important, that communication and training for the staff and the students within the school if that school has a therapy dog. This wouldn't be just something that we'd say that would be approved if approved tonight. It wouldn't be something like, okay, now everyone bring their therapy dog. We have gone through and talked through, like, what does this look like? There would be an integration plan. Again, that conversation between the possible staff member that would be bringing in the therapy dog and the administration, and what would that look like? So, like, here's an example of what that would look like over a 3-week period. That dog would not be in the classroom like right away. It would like build up in hours of when it would be at the school, and where it would be, how to see how that dog reacts to the school, so. This is just an example of, at the elementary level, what that could possibly look like for a dog. You will notice that there's different rest periods in there. We know that dogs, they need, when they're stimulated for 15, 20 minutes or for longer periods of time, they need that rest time. So we know that they will not be on throughout the whole school day. So you see that there's those rest periods in there to give them that time away from kiddos and from that stimulation. And then next steps, if the policy was approved tonight, then as I said, we're in the creation process of that handbook to give us more of the logistics behind, like, what does it look like throughout the district. Continued conversations with administration in each building to align with what their thinking is also, and those integration plans for each building. Questions?
Do we still do the horse?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Rob.
Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, yeah, hey Corey.
Hey, Rob.
So what do we do in the situation where we have students or staff members that have allergies to pets or maybe phobias of animals?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm gonna refer, we've kind of talked about that, but I'm gonna let Brittany kind of talk about, can I have Brittany come up here? Yeah, Brittany's gonna talk, kind of talk
I'll
about.
ask one other question.
Yeah, and what that's kind of looked like.
I'll give you one other question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
And then you guys can answer. The other question is just how many animals are we talking about at any one time being designated as a therapy dog in a school?
Yep. So at the secondary level, I can answer that one question real quick, and then Brittany can answer the allergy and the bite piece. We had talked about that at the secondary level, so at the middle school and high school level, there'd be able to be 2 at each building, and at the elementaries, we would hold it to 1 in each building. And again, kind of talking with administration that it would, again, we want these dogs to be where the student, they'll be around the student population. That's where we want that need to be. So what are the staff members that have that opportunity to be among students the most? So, for example, at the high school level, one of our teachers kind of wanted, but she was a foods teacher. And so, like, of course, being around food isn't the most opportune, but also she only sees a small population of the kiddos. So would that be the best fit for having a therapy dog? So just kind of looking at those situations. And then for the allergy one, I'll let Brittany kind of answer that one.
Yeah, so I can speak on this because I was in Clear Lake last year and we got a dog, Otley. My 2 children are actually allergic to dogs, but I was still a proponent of the good things that are happening. So we worked with the nurses in the building, and there was a sheet that parents were able to fill out and communication went out to them where they could say, hey, my child has maybe a fear of dogs or an allergy to the dog, and they didn't want to have their child around that dog. And so that was something that was put on file. The handler knew that. Also the secondary handler knew that as well, along with the classroom teacher or the teachers that are associated with that child during the day. And that way we were able to ensure that they weren't having any close contact. Again, a health plan in place. So for example, like with my 2 children, it was like the dog can't be in their face. They have to wash their hands if they're around the dog, those types of things. So we were able to get that all documented, so that was able to happen. We did have some others with more severe allergies, so we just ensured, again, proper cleaning was done, that regular grooming, and then ensuring that child wasn't having those interactions in those spaces. So just having that awareness piece and working alongside the administration and those handlers, we ensured that to be taking place.
Thank you.
Yep.
So who takes it for the rest times? Because there's like 4 of them in a day, 4 or 5 of them. Do they just go into an empty classroom, or they go into administration office, or? How does that work?
I think Brittany can talk about what it's looked like in her school, or Tara, I don't know if Tara can talk, but Tara could talk too. But I mean, we even talked about like having a kennel, like in that classroom, so the dog could just go in that kennel, or again, through the obedience training that dogs go through, you can say place, and they go to their pillow or wherever in the classroom, and then they're left alone. I don't know.
Yeah,
other
so
situations.
we had a classroom teacher who actually had the dog, and then the secondary handler was the counselor. And so that dog would just go into the counselor's office during some of those times. Or it was with the teacher, like during their lunch, things like that, where they're typically alone and they're not going to be interacting with others. But like Corey was stating, you just find a spot where with the administration and in the schedule, and so that the dog, along with everyone else, knows where those rest areas are and that there's still supervision happening, because we want to ensure the safety of everyone.
So I have another question, but I may have missed this. Who owns the dog?
Staff member. Teachers.
The staff member
The staff
owns the
member.
dog. So it's their dog
Yes.
and they're bringing it in. So if something were to happen to the dog on site, that's where you had said the liability insurance kicks in or something.
Correct. The insurance agent and company, they just want to make sure that we have all of these parameters in place, this handbook in place, and if we do, they're okay with it. And, you know, the only time it puts us in a strange situation is if there's some sort of gross negligence, but if we're following the process we have in place, we're good.
So how is this different than the one we have at the middle school?
Liam.
Yeah,
Liam.
yeah.
Liam is owned by the mental health
Yeah, by
therapist,
Amanda.
and that's through a different organization.
Right, because we have paid for all of the trainings and the obedience and all of the classes as part of a grant for the 6th grade program we do there. So
This would be making it more widespread.
Right.
Whereas Liam is in.
Right.
And now with this, Liam would be able to not just stay in the office.
They can go. So what do we do in the instance of kids that have an immense fear of dogs?
Yeah.
Is that dog just kind of protected from not going in that classroom, or is that?
Yes, it's helping with that situation. So again, it's a part of that form. Like it would be for like medical. Hey, my child's allergic to, or my child has a fear of dogs, and then it would be having a plan in place for that child and the dog to ensure that there's limited to no interaction that is happening.
Help me understand, are we, if all of this was approved, would we be looking at like a pilot program where we would like test it in one school? Like, we're not like
we've
launching
talked,
12 dogs in 12 different schools.
Yeah, no, so it's, again, a benefit.
Yeah.
So Sadie, Tara's dog,
Yeah.
is trained and therapy qualified through the Therapy Dog Alliance. And so her dog is good. And so Brittany could become the secondary handler and go to Emerson and kind of work through that through Emerson. So that Emerson could become our pilot kind of building to see and work out some of the kinks and things that we may, as we're working through this handbook and things like that, so.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I just think it would be weird to have like 12 dogs show up all of a sudden one day. But
Yeah.
the idea of a pilot program seems like
Yeah.
a great idea to me.
Yes, and that is not the intention whatsoever, is to have 5 dogs in a building or whatever. Again, we really want to make sure that whoever the classroom teacher or whoever it is in the building has access, who has the most access to students, and who's giving the most emotional and support to those students.
So this staff member would work closely with the mental health therapist that's in those buildings as well, as a referral into this child might benefit from this therapy dog?
I mean,
Or like, how do we get the list of kids that would benefit? Or
Well,
it's just a classroom that they just go in the classroom?
It's the building. And so you saw some of the pictures of Sadie with kids. She was in the library a lot, kids would come
Okay.
in. I have one little boy that was in crisis. Sadie's walking through the hall. Sadie sits right down. right next to the boy, calms him down, he gets up, he starts to pet her. And so they're accessible to any child, not necessarily just children that are referred to mental health services. They're really referred, it's really for any child that are like.
So, yeah, obviously I'm a huge fan. I'm just trying to process. So is it normal that we approve policies and then handbooks come out? Do we approve the handbook then once that's, or?
So the thought behind that in the policy committee was, if we have staff members that are interested in this program and they want to bring their animal in over break, we have a policy in place. There's not students present. We can start getting things going tonight by approving the policy and waiving the second reading, and then allow for these guys to continue to build the handbook out to where we've approved the policy and the administration can manage the handbook.
Gotcha. Okay.
And to your question, yes, your policy comes before your handbook, because there's no reason building a handbook, which is an extension of policies that you have in place.
Hey, Mac, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Maybe Tara can answer this. With the adoption of this policy, is there any worry or concern of like other emotional support animals being requested by students or families to be brought into the school that are owned and pushing that onto the district?
Not any more than what's currently there. Emotional support animals are already currently in law, and so if somebody were to request one, we would have to go through the process of, did the doctors prescribe it? Why are we having an emotional support animal? It's already there, Rob. It's already in law.
Okay.
This is just, it might highlight it a little bit. You'd make it a little more known. But there's really nothing we could do if somebody were to have an emotional support animal. There's a process that you have to go through. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Does providing this service negate need for individual service? So do we, by providing this, do we in some ways negate the need for individual? Is there any value added from that perspective?
Do you mean by providing like counseling or mental health
Just
services?
by providing the dog program that you've presented here, it would seem to me like you've already provided a service that has benefit to kids. So the idea of needing individual animals seems like that would be diminished perhaps by having
I see
something
for that.
like
Yes,
this. Just a thought, so.
It might be a step, right? Hey, well, we have a therapy program, let's try that first before we jump to an individualized one.
We can back more into that in policy. If you guys have more questions that come up. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
Are you looking for
Next item on the agenda is the consideration of district developed special education delivery plan. And I don't know, I guess if, Sarah, are you speaking on this?
I don't have a formal presentation.
That's all right.
I could just highlight a couple of the big changes that we looked at for this plan.
Thank you, guys.
One was just aligning with our current mission and vision to make sure that that language was the same. The other one, we've worked really hard to kind of make sure that the full continuum of services was available in all buildings, so that it speaks to that in the plan. And then the one really big one was the caseload matrix, which is how we determine like the size of rosters for teachers. There was quite a bit of work done that process by looking at other district roster, or other district like matrices. And then also our teachers kind of ran their current rosters through several different scenarios to kind of see how things lined up. So those would be big changes.
One thing to mention when we think about this matrix and class roster size, that's how we determine if a special ed teacher is needed. Okay? Not how we determine if TAs are needed, those are IEPs. Those are written into individual IEPs. But this says, okay, if it gets to this level, we have to look at adding another special ed teacher because the caseload is overloaded. So that's the importance of that page 7 matrix. And what Sarah and the team did is they took all surrounding school districts, big schools, small schools, looked at what do they currently do compared to what we were doing so that we could kind of match up. Because we certainly don't want to have caseloads that are much larger than another school district, but we also don't want to have them super low either. So that was the measuring stick there.
I think the other feedback I'd gotten from teachers through the years is that like our current matrix didn't necessarily capture their workload, especially with the shifts in AEA. There are just a lot more expectations than what they're used to as far as paperwork, IEPs, things like that. So really trying to capture that piece on there too.
Any questions?
Can you bring up, Ray, the matrix, please? So can you click in that? Thank you. So this would all be our goal, right? Because if we do this matrix and it looks like we need, I'm just throwing a number out there, like 6 more teachers. We know our special ed behavior, we know what the numbers are increasing. So we may find ourselves in a situation where this is the goal where we want to be, but we might not be able to reach that right away with all the hiring of staff, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's based on your workforce and
Okay.
the ability to be able to hire as well.
Right.
But if it says we need 6, then that's what we have to post to try and hire for.
Okay. Is that legislative wise? Like if it says we need 6, we'll post for 6, or that's just our matrix?
In the matrix, in that kind of, yep.
We came up with this. We came up with this.
Yeah. The state recommends, like, they kind of have 3 matrices that they share. What's tricky is they don't say, like, what should the range be for each of these matrices? So we looked at I looked at a lot of other districts that were kind of similar in size to kind of come up with these things. And then to think about, like, are there any questions that are not on there? What's kind of unique about this one is it used to be that we would have, like, a resource teacher roster that would have like certain numbers for like a range of points as well as students, and then also a behavior one and a functional skills one. This is just points, and so that kind of helps determine like what's like points in a classroom where there's several students that are nonverbal. There's just lots more needs on there, whereas a resource roster, it's not in existence, but kind of it is, because then you have fewer needs, you can do more students.
Is this commensurate with kind of how we do business right now? Or is this like, can you already anticipate growth with this matrix beyond what we already have?
I would say like if you looked at our current matrix, there were areas that were already popping up that like we're probably gonna need some additional supports. This, I think, also says the same thing, maybe a little bit more, but also gets us in line with surrounding districts and their roster sizes.
So a special education teacher fills us out according to their classroom, right? So like this is
roster.
third grade, their roster,
Yep.
and then they get their amount of points, right? So how many teachers in our district will be filling this sheet out?
Right now I have 35 special ed teachers.
So 35 of them will fill this sheet out, and then there'll be points at the bottom of them, and then it just gives us a better vision of what does our special education program need
So
to
then
look.
within this plan, we said that we'd like teachers to be in a range of 60 to 75 points.
60 to 75 points, okay.
Have you
Several times.
What's anticipated?
It kind of shows that we'll need additional support at the middle school, which we were kind of anticipating because we have a lot of students that kind of COVID bump will all hit the middle school next year. The other two that are popping up is really close would be Emerson and Wilder. And then we have 3 staff to replace as well right now for next year.
Teachers.
Yes.
That doesn't include the special ed associates.
Correct.
Right, I guess that was what was leading to that first question is, if we get all these points back and we look at it and we see our need, it might be what our need is, but it might, for the board, have to be a goal to try to get all those positions exactly where we need them to be.
Yes, and this is only for certified staff. This does not factor in TAs and the hiring of TAs. Again, that's IEP specific.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we review it every 5 years. So this plan this is the 5-year review.
This,
of it.
okay. And so this is our matrix moving for the next 5 years.
Correct.
And then who determines level 1, 2, or 3 weighting?
That's based on the IEP, based on like the service. There's like a roster or like another matrix through the AEA. And then that determines the funding that we get for each of the students. Yeah.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion to approve the request.
So moved.
Motion made by Eric. Seconded by Tim. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thanks for all your work on that, Sarah.
I'm glad it's done.
I can imagine so.
I'm going to sneak out for a band concert.
Enjoy. Next item is the annual community report. Mrs. Duran will be presenting.
So each year, the Iowa Department of Education requests certain types of information from a school district, and this particular year, they also want us to submit the community report. Essentially, it's just a compilation of different sources of data. It kind of gives an overview to different areas of our district. So if you take a look at the first page of that, the contents of the report are listed everywhere from the guiding statements that were developed through the TeamWorks process. We'll touch base on that. I do want to highlight a new leadership structure in place this year to help us achieve our goals, and then on into some of the Iowa State Assessment of Student Progress and a point system that is put in place by the Department of Ed, which essentially assigns a category to our schools and some of the impact of those changes. To the degree of the other sections, we can go into as much as you want. You can read through the report. If you have follow-up questions for me, I'll be glad to answer those, or even at a future meeting, we could dig into that. So if we go to that first page, again, those are the district guiding statements that were developed through that TeamWorks process when Superintendent Enns was here, just identifying the mission, vision, core values, and strategic directions. On that next page is a visual of a leadership team structure that supports where we were trying to head with the vision of our district, with what we're wanting to accomplish here. And so you'll notice off to the right, the PLTs, the professional learning teams on that visual. Those are the design of the teacher meetings that occur every Wednesday on the early outs. All of our teachers are a part of a professional learning team. And they drive that work, they decide what they're working on within the structure of what do we want students to learn, how are we going to teach it, how will we assess it, how will we follow up if they already know it, how will we follow up if they don't know it. So it's their collaboration time, and by legislation, we need to have 36 hours of that type of collaboration outside of professional development. This is the second year in which we have a building leadership team structure, which is the middle visual, the BLT. And that is made up of the principal and several key teacher leaders that give input and guidance to the development of the building so it can reach its goal. And that was put in 2 years ago because we were seeing kind of this gap between professional learning teams trying to function and then the buildings moving forward. And so this particular year, because again, we have a lot of things that go on in the district, but there was that question about how at times we're always looking at lagging data. And a lot of what's in this report is lagging data. It's already occurred, it's like an end of the year summary. And the question was, well, how do we get in front of that? How do we look at leading data to show that we're measuring along the way and we're going to make our goal at the end versus looking at it after the fact? And so the district leadership team was put together this year, made up of our principals, our instructional coaches, and one building leadership team member from each building. They come together at the district leadership team. We've had one meeting so far this year. The second one will be this Thursday. And we're going through a process that's built off of a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. How do we build in a structure so that we execute our actions to make sure we attain our goals? And I'd like to think about it in the book. It talks about a cadence of accountability. And really the push for it is a cadence of support. How do we keep a cadence of measuring and looking at our data and hearing voices on how it can improve in a structured format? So the book also talks about the whirlwind, right? You can get lost in the whirlwind of the day and then forget what your priority pieces were that you wanted to focus on and achieve. So the district leadership team is there to help keep us focused, even though the whirlwind keeps going, and you don't ignore things that might not be your wildly important goal that you decide on. You can have secondary goals, but you really want to stay targeted and focused. So that leadership team structure is hopefully going to get us to one of the main goals. If you move to the next page then, the goal that the district settled on was literacy. We know that if we want kids to be successful throughout school and then upon their graduation, if they can be literate, they have a high probability of being more successful, not only as a community member, but in their lives. And so with that K-12 focus on literacy, the percentage of third grade students that score at or above their benchmark on an assessment that we use that's called FastBridge, that assessment helps us, I guess, meet one of the state's requirements for measuring early literacy in the elementary. We want to make sure that we've increased that from 66% of our students being proficient on that to 80% by spring of 2026. And that's the staggered benchmark of improvement of where we want to hit with that.
So on that trajectory, I think it's a great goal, right? It makes perfect sense. It also seems like a pretty big jump, right, to get there. So are we pretty comfortable we've got things in place that'll get us to that 80, or?
That's what we're trying to build through the district leadership team. And what's interesting about this approach is in education and probably in many other venues, somebody sits down and creates the plan and then disseminates the plan and says, this is what we're doing. And that's often how we function. Just as team works, how that was built when Ted had brought that, right? We started out with the students and the parents and teachers and other stakeholders and looked at what do we want to have as our daily desired experience, and then built that up or to the side to your leadership level as a school board, and then you decided here's the focal point. Similar to this is we had to take a look and say if literacy is our key piece, now we bring it back to the PLTs and the BLTs to decide what is it that's needed. What are those things that we need to change or put in place to meet these needs? So that's the part that's coming out now in our next sessions and as we go through this year. Because yes, you can say we have curriculum, we have assessments, we have great teachers. We've tried to reduce workload at the elementary level by having dedicated science teachers. we've tried to do these different things, but we have such a wide diversity among students' skills and abilities, and how do you make that work? And that's kind of what's coming out, is what do we need to keep fine-tuning to meet all of those needs? So a part of this will come down to when you're working with the PLTs, how do the teachers decide what their commitment is for that next week or the next 2 weeks? What are those small changes that sometimes we would want to do in our normal day-to-day actions, but we don't get to it because this whirlwind starts, right? Somebody has an accident on the playground. Somebody comes in and they've been out sick for 2 weeks. We have somebody who had maybe an unfortunate event at home, and they come in and aren't able to focus on learning. Somebody didn't get breakfast, right? All of that whirlwind happens, and then we can lose sight of what are some of those smaller changes we can put in place to try and reach these literacy goals. So that's what we're trying to build in place, and I'll talk a little bit too about this cadence of support, where at the PLTs, they'll review those small goals that they've set weekly. The principal will be having those check-ins and conversations on those weekly. We'll also have every 6 weeks, teams coming together to look at this data, even at the individual student basis, and say, are we making progress? What else do we need to shift? Versus coming back and saying, okay, at our May, we did our May benchmarking, did we make it or not? So trying to build those steps in between. And a lot of that work in different ways was occurring, but we didn't have consistency across the district. We're also trying to take a look at, do people feel competent? Do they feel like they know what they need to know to be teaching things? So can PD still be even more individualized for them? And clarity. Are we all on the same page with what we're trying to work towards? And I think those words seem simplistic sometimes, but even the word clarity is hard. We can have a meeting with the district leadership team and then people leave and it's still different in their minds as to what we were talking about. So those are those key pieces to help us try to meet that goal. And ambitious, yes, but I think it's essential that we get to that, because 80 is a number that you hear oftentimes, well, you got to get to 80%. But what's shown is if we can't get 80% of our students to be proficient at these points along the way, we won't have enough resources or time when we say that they will then have to do an intervention, which is additional teaching and time for students outside of their core instruction. You can't sustain it. So we've got to keep beefing this up across the board to reduce these needs that you see that keep coming for that, so.
Have the PLTs and BLTs that would be responsible for this benchmark seen this?
Yes, this has been a part of the district leadership team's training from their one day they've had so far. In terms of this particular graph, I can't say that part for sure, because each principal was taking back the information about the cadence that we're trying to put in of support. So this probably will be coming out if it didn't at this last, their first 6-week check-in, it would at the next.
Yeah, I'm just curious what their feedback is. I mean, buy-in's huge, and to Eric's point, I mean, if this is super intimidating and then you tie that to what Donna was talking about. I 100% agree that you set a high mark, because if you set a low mark, then you're not going to, you have to set high marks, you have to. And buy-in is important, and getting fellowship for it is the pathway to success.
Well, and the goal that's listed, they should have seen that for sure, because that's considered one of the district, in what we're studying is called the wildly important goal. What's wildly important leverage point that's going to probably make sure that our kids can be successful?
Literacy.
Yeah.
80%.
Hey, Mac,
Go ahead.
Hey, Mac, I had a question for Mrs. Duran.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Annette, I was just wondering, over the last few years, we've gotten more and more data, and like you said, like it's always lagging data, but in that it's still data. I was wondering, are there any data analytic companies out there that do educational forecasting. You know how we can look forward and say, hey, if a student's here or there, this is where their risk is going to be in the future of XYZ. Are there any ways to forecast positive, like, hey, if we do this, we should see results of this in 7th grade or this in 9th grade or upon graduation?
I'm not aware of a company per se. There is a lot of research out there about what is the most effective strategies for instruction, what are effective techniques to use to address chronic absenteeism, what are things that you can do to address for students that might have trauma in their lives. So in those areas of specialty, for things that we see, there are bodies of research that shows what might get you a higher effect size than others. I do know that the Department of Education has a contract with a company for the acronym of it. I'm going to call it EVOS. But trainings are ongoing with that system, and it's a predictability model based on our Iowa State Assessment of Student Progress results to try and do a prediction model of their growth and where they should be achieving. That's very unfamiliar in the state of Iowa currently.
Yeah.
And I think the Department of Ed has some future plans with that type of model that we'll continue learning about. But that is supposedly more predictive, but not so much saying if you take these steps, that's the step you would take to have a student
Is
achieve.
there a way we could get on that list for being a beta test subject of that, our district?
Well, the Department of Education actually has a contract with that company, and I have some of the data that they have in reports that they have run for our district. Right now, I kind of in the network of curriculum, they're trying to take a look at what ways maybe some districts might be using that data. It shows a very different picture from the IS or the ISASP results. So we want to make sure that we can speak to it clearly as to how they're doing those calculations. Because in some of the southern states in the nation, they're using that for pay for performance. Is the driver for that particular assessment.
Well, thank you.
I think it would help get your PLTs and BLTs on board if you were able to have data that came from EVOS that said, we've tracked this and our predictive analysis says that if you have this goal and you do this over the next 2 years, whatever it is, that we generally see a X% of increase in blah, blah, blah.
That one particularly won't speak to that side of it,
Okay.
but it would take the students' scores from the ISASP and say, did you make projected growth compared to the state of Iowa or didn't you? And so their projections change every year depending on how the entire state did.
You've shown us that data before.
I don't think the EVOS that I've
Not the
had.
EVOS, but we always see where we fall in comparison.
Yeah, and I'm going to show that here to you.
I'll stop talking.
In the next, no. They're like two different state types of assessment. And so if we can figure out this one and how it compares and be able to speak to that, there could be some benefits to it.
But according to this trajectory here, 2020, fall of 2024, winter of 2025, spring of 2025, that is this year's third graders.
That was from last year's third grade data from our ISASP results. And our district determined, can we make this type of growth? So we set this trajectory.
I guess my
Fourth
question
grade,
is,
fifth grade.
are all 6 of these benchmarks the same students, or is it 2 classes?
It would be different students each year.
I see what you're saying, right? Like you're asking if the winter of 26 and the spring of 26, those would be 6th graders when we started this goal? Is that what you're asking?
This is third graders each year, because our kindergarten, first, and second are working on this same goal to ensure that as our kids get to third grade, we want to see that continue to grow.
So we're not looking at fourth, fifth,
Tracking
and sixth
them.
graders. We're looking at from Kim got it, because that's, even though the goal is K through 12, our
Right.
focus is K to,
For this particular snapshot for our district goal. And we also have goals for moving from 6-12 also.
Gotcha.
Knowing that fourth and fifth grade are contributing to the success of when the students get to that point.
The point that I'm making though is that based on the dates on this chart, our goal is for this year's third grade class at a 66 this fall, our expectation is to raise them 8 points to 74 by the end of this current school year. And then our hope would be that next year's third graders in the fall of 2025 are going to start at 74 and we're going to increase them by 6 points.
Yes.
Do we have any idea where
Second graders are
the second graders are at now?
We do, their winter testing will occur right here in January. Yep.
So that 80% would be students that are currently first graders now.
Second grade.
That would be by the end of their third grade year.
We're gonna make it happen. It's gonna happen, because I think with this too, as we measure third graders 3 times per year, right? We know that they're gonna be coming into third grade, so we're all trying to narrow together, what can we do collectively all together to make this happen? Because out of the Teamworks goal-setting process, the administration ended up with 14 different measurements, 14 different target areas to improve on in the district vision card. And out of 14 of those measurements, right, then we come back 6 months later, 9 months later, how did we do? This way we're taking out of that literacy. Let's hit it. Let's put our resources there, our time, our support. Let's try to do everything we can to make sure this happens while this whirlwind of our day-to-day continues on. I think you were going to say something.
This is our trajectory, not the current data, right? So 66% is current. And we're saying we want it to be at 70. So I just wonder if you're.
66 is current, everything else is our goal.
Is our goal,
Yeah.
right? Our incremental goals to get to 80% in a year and a half. Yeah.
And this class, this third grade class that we have now would have been kindergarten, the year that everything was weird with COVID.
Preschool.
Preschool.
And when something like, and this may be somewhat of a silly question, but when you put something like this into place, it's very, lots of buy-in, there's time, it's going to take time and effort and understanding. And we wouldn't expect math scores or something else to maybe, I don't say the word suffer, but because of the attention and the focus, and which I'm on board with this, don't get me wrong, but would there be a concern? Or is it just, nope, it's going to stay on par?
And that's a key point to this, is that you can't ignore the other pieces that you might be working on, such as therapy dogs, or school safety, or the other key pieces such as math instruction. What this is saying is that continues on, and those efforts continue. We are just going to be hyper-focused in this area and ensure that we commit to each other, that if we said we're going to take this step to do that improvement next week, then we're going to hold each other accountable to doing that. I don't have the administrative team's, what's called their scoreboard. This is a piece of what they developed, but they're mimicking this same process where at this point, their goal of patterning off of this literacy piece for the district is, can we get all of ourselves spending at least 20% of our time focused on literacy in some way. Whether that's having one-to-one conversations about it, learning about how best instructional practices for it, doing walkthroughs in classrooms. What are the key leverage points for our work that will help us to get to this? Because as we've been studying, you can have a lot of good ideas. There are a lot of good ideas out there. But what are those few that we can really leverage to then get this result? And be targeted to it, because this over here could be a great idea, but we can't do everything. And if this would get us maybe a 10% growth, but we find out that this action would get us 15%, well, let's put our time with that. And it can change and morph and move forward. And the hand signals that we're using with our administrative team too is we're gonna learn and then we're gonna move. And then we're gonna learn some more and we're gonna move. And we've gotta keep adjusting this. But we can't take a year just to learn a book or learn an approach. Let's learn it, put it in action. Learn from that, change, and keep it moving. So there will be little bumps and issues and things like that, but the whole point of it is, can we support the system on a regular basis so we don't look back in May and say, well, how did we do? Or even 3 times a year, how did we do? We didn't make it. Deflated. We didn't make our scores, kids aren't achieving, and then it can affect your moods. Where at this point, if we know, okay, I have people, I have a team behind me, we're all going to try, I have a voice in choosing what I want to work on and do, can we rally around that to do it?
And I think it's, the beauty of this is it goes down to the teacher level too.
I was gonna ask.
Right, like they get to choose every 2 weeks what they believe will make the biggest impact with the kids that they have at night. And we're gonna spend 20% of our time focusing on that impact to make that movement. Because a lot of times what we hear is we don't feel like we have any say, right? The curriculum dictates. Well, now you do, right? You get to set those goals as a teacher, and then you're accountable to your counterparts, your first grade team, your second grade team, your math team. Did I make my goal for this week? If not, what are the barriers? Because there are some weeks where barriers are going to get in the way. Okay, can we alleviate those barriers? Are those barriers consistent that we need to address them in a more systematic way?
So the feedback from the buildings and the professional teacher teams, they're catching on to the learn and this has been within the last week and a half, really gaining the movement. And so this Thursday, we'll have our second district leadership team, but the teachers are just now crafting their first commitments. Principals have crafted their first. We're just like practicing it these last couple weeks. And so we're just gonna keep strengthening it and moving it forward. So. Ray, I'll have you scroll down to the next page that looks similar to this. This is the more of the secondary, where we build up to the high school in the area of literacy using their ISASS scores. Now, recognizing that ELA, English Language Arts, that score involves not only reading, but writing also. The ISASS doesn't break those skills apart. And our goal is to get from 70% to 80% proficient by spring 2026. That's the main type of assessment that they have. It doesn't mean that we won't be looking at other types of assessment data, whether that's classroom-based exams that they give, quizzes, what pieces of data can be used to try to measure student growth also. But at the same time, to go back to your point, Ryan, too, we still want in the areas of science and math, we still want our average scale scores to keep increasing for students on how they're achieving. So even though that might not be a primary district wildly important goal, we still have goals in those areas and we still work towards those.
Yeah, thank you. Ignoring those other two, I was just wondering if there was ever a concern that, gosh, we do this, are we going to?
It's a very important point because sometimes we can get that perception that, well, if I focus on this, what happens over here? well, we're still gonna manage it, but intensely focus on these goals. So, okay. On the next page.
Let me just add you if you get, let me just add you if you get that. Don't you pose.
It's all right. The Iowa School Performance Profile Report, that's the one that typically comes out in the fall. It's probably this is the third or fourth year of this type of report. And that's when the Department of Ed takes a variety of pieces of data about our schools and gives us like a score or a rank, kind of a ranked name. This rating category, this first grouping here, that's for prior to this year. Those were the rating categories, and those names have stayed the same. What has changed is how they calculate the scores. And you can't compare last year's to this year's because they've selected different things, especially at the high school level, as to how they're calculating it. Part of that probably is geared towards requirements from the federal level, that then they respond in this way as to how they determine funding or that.
And I know the change from prior to this year is because we were out of compliance with the federal government. And so they had to rewrite the plan and adding in attendance of some sort, which is where we get the chronic absenteeism code or law.
So as we scroll down this section a little bit, just to show you, they've turned it into where it can also be calculated by percentage of points earned, and then also points earned. So some of the charts you'd have to look at very intensely to kind of figure those out. But as you keep scrolling down, I've included in here the 2022, then 2023, those are on the past calculations, and then 2024 for this year. A key change is that if any school has a subgroup, for example, that has not shown enough growth, they're considered targeted. And we have 4 out of our 6 buildings that are targeted for our special education students that have not made enough growth. Now, that is not to say, here's our issue or anything like that. We see students across the board that need to grow more in their learning. But in particular for that subgroup, if you're targeted for anything in that nature, you are automatically dropped a category. So you could be doing really well or fairly well in all of the other categories for demographics or subgroups. But if any particular one of those you end up being targeted for, they drop your category scoring. And that is one reason why you would see for some of our buildings, they have dropped a category because of that subgroup population. But that's something for us to pay very close attention to because we want all students to be growing and making growth with their learning. But it's also related probably to the report Sarah had just shared with you earlier on our point systems and what resources do we have, how can we work together on those pieces for improvement. In response to this piece, last year, each principal came and talked with you about their building goals from last year and whether they were focusing in on perhaps like student relationships with teachers, or they were trying to improve family parent-teacher conferences, like what were their action plans. And each building continues that process, which is an acronym we call the SAMI, a self-assessment of their MTSS programs in response to these. So they do have action plans and reports that are put in place to try to, again, keep having continual improvement in many of those areas. If you to the next section. Part of what the Iowa Department of Education asks for is an overview in areas from our ISASP reports and different demographics, reporting out perhaps by race. So this is just a snapshot of types of data you've seen prior on language arts, math and science, and how we did on the ISASP, but it needs to be within the report also to the Department of Ed. And then the rest of the categories in here are things like on our dropout rates, or how are our kids doing on the ACTs if they take the AC test, our biliteracy seal. How many kids are getting that seal from the state saying that they are proficient in 2 languages? And so those are some types of extra data put in just so we have kind of a comprehensive look in case, again, there might be something of interest to you in the future, or we can always go back to this type of report. But this would get submitted to the Department of Education as part of an audit that they do, and they particularly had asked to see this type of report this year. So, I don't know if there was anything else in that report of particular interest to you, but I can always bring that back. Tara wanted to do this report.
I did.
But she said, Annette, like this report
I'll
so
just
much,
jump in
you
and
just
step on your toes,
take
is what I
it.
said.
I remember the meeting where we went through the data and we expressed concerns about how to get certain percentages up. So I very much like hearing about the deliberate effort and using the PLTs, the BLTs, and the DLTs in order to gain momentum towards those goals. That's good stuff.
Any additional questions? Accept, yeah.
Is this a motion? I make a motion to accept the 2023-24 annual community report as presented.
Motion made by Sue. Seconded by Ryan. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Let's take a 5-minute recess, real quick. Quick 5 minutes.
You can continue on.
All right, we'll
We
wait.
should cover finances.
We're still live. That is good for you, Bill. She had to go.
All right, everybody's back, come back from recess. Next item on the agenda is the monthly financial report.
And included in your packet is the typical 3 financial reports. And I don't think there's anything unusual standing out on those, but would entertain any questions you might have.
Hearing no questions. Motion to approve the finance reports.
Monthly financial reports.
Motion made by Ryan.
Second.
Seconded by Eric. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. The Facilities Committee report.
Rob, you want me to handle that, or?
It might be better, Chad.
Sounds good. Yeah, so we met last week on Thursday morning. Bernie walked us through a few things. First, this request for partial retainage for the District Operations Center project. And Bernie and Mrs. Paul in particular have been working with Envision, and then Envision working with Graphite as far as what items are left, and essentially the retainage that would be left after this request would more than cover, really more than double the cost of what it would take if someone were to finish the project items, punch list, paperwork, stuff like that, instead of Graphite. So we felt comfortable with their request to have partial release of retainage. Envision already has laid out what it'll take. Bernie has talked with us, talked with Graphite, talked with Envision about what remaining items they're having, a lot of items with doors particularly. And Graphite has indicated that they do have an intention of moving forward over the next few weeks so that by January we would be in a position to hopefully have final acceptance. Once we have that final acceptance, then there'll be 30 days and we'd pay out the rest of that retainage. But I don't know, Tara or Rob, if you wanted to add to that, because we're obviously going to look to act on that again tonight too.
No, I'm good, Chad. Go ahead, Tara.
No, the 30-day, so in January, if you act on paying the final, if we have everything in place to do that, there's a 30-day hold on that to make sure that all of their bills are paid, and then they get the final payment. That final payment is like, all in, we're done, project is closed. But legally, we have to wait 30 days on that.
And then we talked some about the high school addition and renovation, and particularly an item with roofing. And Bernie's still collecting information and still talking with Envision and talking with Edge. Most of the new part of the building has a TPO type of roof. This EPDM is what we currently have in a lot of our high school, and we just want to make sure that we're getting the right value out of that and that the two are going to integrate correctly. And so he's still collecting information on that. And then as far as the baseball, softball renovation project is concerned, Bernie's still working with Tim West as well on some of the items that we could cover. You know, he's already started to do some work that you've maybe even seen for the dugouts. He's talking to some people about the backstop, talking to some people about the bullpens to hopefully, lower that projected cost that we're looking to have for this project when we're ready to go out to bid. Hopefully we're looking in January to have some more concrete plans for stuff that's going to go out to bid, and hopefully get out to bid and get those back in February so that we can get ahead of the project.
And it seems like a lot of the in-house things, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chad, that Bernie's been able to look at have been savings for us.
Yeah, for sure. Probably as much as even 50,000 on some of the dugout stuff. The backstop we're not quite sure on because we need to get some confirmation on how many of the poles would still need to be in place. The ideal, of course, there is to not have the chain link fence there anymore, but have more of a netting up. So obviously you don't have to have quite the support that you have otherwise. So there'd be quite a savings hopefully there. And then bullpen or batting cages and the like, probably looking at a few, tens of thousands of savings there as well. So, yeah, each of those items would be looking to have significant cost savings for us.
Any questions for the Facilities Committee? Next item on the agenda is consideration of release of the partial retainage.
Wait, I'm sorry. I do have a question for facilities. Have we talked any more about, with tennis moving to the fall next year, and more about their facilities and possible lights or anything like that?
We did not talk about that.
We haven't recently, I don't think really anything more than, I think the one report we gave that we were looking at, with that change, would we, is it, are we better off with lights versus additional courts and the like? But I think probably we originally left that Bernie was gonna, ask around as far as cost to light, and we haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, okay.
And that'll come as a
Hey, guys.
as a bigger project. Yes, Rob?
You know how Soccer Tribe uses those portable light systems? Is there a way we could use those for the tennis area? Just of course, with fall, the days will get shorter. Although, now that I think about it, is their season over in September?
No. No.
I thought I heard it over pretty quick next fall.
I had never heard for sure because I knew they weren't talking at one time, and I would imagine they probably have it pinned down a little bit better by now. But I had heard that same thing, Rob, where they would even start fairly early, comparatively in August, so that they were done pretty close to October 1. So.
Yeah, I thought I might have heard that too. Now that I think about it, which maybe I guess the days will be getting shorter, but I don't know. Maybe if temporary lights would be needed or portable lights, maybe that could be something to consider, just to allow them to be able to play into the evening longer.
Right. Yep.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Next item is the consideration to release the partial retainage for the District Operations Center building project. The amount that we are looking to release is $84,702.48, and that would that would be how much would remain after we release $252,687. My question would be, are we legally obligated to release any of this until the project is complete?
That is a good question. I think the answer may be no.
Actually,
Yeah.
they said that we have to, because we've reached substantial completion, the 84,000 is legally only what we can keep to finish the project in there. So we have, because we went over that with Jason
Yeah.
on the phone that day.
I would say that if we didn't, then yes, there could be, and what that looks like, I don't know, complaint or whatever from Graphite about withholding an excess.
I'm just wondering, since it's now the middle of December and the project was slated to be done back in March.
January, March.
At this point, if they're saying they can have it done by the end of the month, does it make sense? But if we're obligated, then
Yeah, I would say so.
So you need a motion for the 252,000 or for the 84,000?
the 252.
Is Bernie in support of this?
I assume he has to be, yeah.
Is Bernie in support of this?
Yes. Yep. And you legally do not have any right to not.
Yeah.
They have completed this work, and so we owe them that $250.
So I make a motion then to release a partial retainage to Graphic Construction Group in the amount of $252,687.16.
Motion made by Sue,
I'll second that.
seconded by Rob. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Next item is the child care rates for summer 2025 and the 2025-2026 school year.
Did our new director set these? Or do we-
Yeah, I worked with,
Okay.
with Justine Fredley, our new director on
Yeah.
setting up these new rates for starting next summer and then next year.
Are these pretty consistent with those around the area? Do you know if she had a chance to look at what Rock or Carlisle or any of those?
I don't know, typically that would be their process that, Kim had previously, and that's what, Justine would have. I don't know for sure to the extent she did that or what she might have, but.
And is the increase because of staff increases or because?
By far, the biggest portion would be staff increases, yes.
Did we make one recent, like last year, or had we gone like 4 or 5 years without an increase?
Last increase was 2 years ago.
Okay.
But
Before that,
call is pretty significant.
And actually, I'll take that back, Ryan, that they reanalyzed it, I think it was 2 years ago, and decided not to increase it because they had gotten some grant funds through COVID and the like. So
Yeah,
it probably
Yeah, I
has
think we
been,
know that, if I remember right.
so it has been a little bit longer.
catch up here maybe.
Right.
What her math is.
Do we have a wait list in any of our pre-school or after-school with our students?
There's 272 students enrolled right now, and they're expanding at 2 of the sites.
So 272 students. And expanding at 2 sites.
Yep.
Because,
What was your second comment, Tara?
We're expanding at 2 of the elementary sites.
and that's because of need.
Oh, we are.
It's because of need, like we're seeing a wait list or the need is
Yeah,
where it needs to be.
I see that as an opportunity to try to retain kids and families going to other districts. And that's great that we can expand.
And what's preventing some of the expansion is just being able to hire people
Okay, can do it.
Yeah, yeah.
and space limitations.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, 245. Sue, on your notes. What? 245. And expanding, increasing enrollment at Emerson and Wilder.
I would think that would be something hard to find someone to come into school, work those hours, just the mornings. And I know we have a lot of Simpson. Do we still have a lot of Simpson students that help out? Do you know?
Simpson in high school, and then when sports seasons change, then staffing changes. So,
Entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion made by Eric,
Second.
seconded by Tim. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 I hate every time we have to increase costs for our parents, but I get it.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. For the record, it was like a 1.4%
I know.
increase. Very, very minimal.
I know, but not if you have your kid in it every week, because that adds up.
Our cost is probably went up significantly higher than 1.5% though. We just have to think of it from that perspective.
I know.
We're not being malicious.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in these times, it's always hard to increase. We all get it. We understand why.
Next item is the request for modified supplemental amount for increasing enrollment.
These next, next three agenda items, very similar, but they're opportunities for us to request additional budget authority from the School Budget Review Committee. One for, a certain amount for increasing enrollment. The next one for amount for open enrollment out, or that wasn't on the previous year's count. Then, like for the last one, English language learners, instruction beyond 5 years. Instruction beyond 5 years, and so these are costs that we're incurring and not necessarily getting the budget authority up front for them. So it's kind of in arrears. All of these, like I said, our budget authority that would go towards our quote unquote unspent balance. These are not items that we're taxing for, at least not yet. That's a decision that we make through the budget process in the spring.
So Chad, can I have you do something for me? And I'm sorry, fellow board members, I'm gonna take some of your time. Will you just go through request open enrollment out? Will you just describe what you have in that box?
So, and the state pulls information, certified, it's for increasing enrollment, for example, certified enrollment current year FTE. So our certified enrollment, that is a snapshot as of October 1,
Right.
that we certified by October 15, 343020. Previous year, that number was 342270, so you get to this increase FTE of 7.5. So this district cost per pupil is what the DCPP is. That's kind of the baseline number that the legislature gives you per kid.
Right, yep, I got that.
So you get to the 58,695.
Yep.
In this current year, you're gonna educate those kids and incur those costs, but this year you don't have that authority for them, so this is giving you that authority for them. And so that's why the amount of the request is, in this case, the maximum that we could request.
So then this open enrollment out. So the 33, so we have 33 students that had open enrolled out. Right, is that?
Yes, I'm not.
Can you go through that box right there for me?
This one's a little bit trickier because I haven't run through these numbers before very well. I can tell you, obviously think about what the EIC, obviously TLC is the teacher leadership compensation, the current student cost per pupil.
So is that saying of this money, $377.74 is going to TLC?
377.74 is is an amount per pupil, and then there's also the state cost per pupil. That's a 78.56 that gets added on. The PD portion is again another allocation that we get on a pure per pupil basis.
Gotcha, so what you did is broke down the 7,826 into the different categories?
Well, it is different categories, but all those are added together.
Right.
And then you're taking that times that eligible FTE of 25.5 to come up with the 213,000 of, again, authority for open and rolled out kids that weren't on the prior year count. So I don't know if I have a good way to explain it. I don't know if.
Well, there are certain dollars that follow students, right? So professional development dollars, the TLC dollars, and the educational credit dollars. They follow the student to the district. The other ones, like we get some transportation dollars on a per pupil. They don't follow.
Okay.
So that's how this one is broken down. And
Gotcha.
It looks different than the one above it.
Gotcha.
Those are kids that we're receiving. We receive all of that money. But now we have to show how much money is actually going to follow somebody that open enrolls out. Somebody that open enrolls in, we get all of that money when they come into us as well.
So a different district, if they're open enrolling in, that district is paying us $377.74 for the TLC account.
Right. Yep. So theirs looks like this, just with the number that's coming to us.
Gotcha.
This is the number that we're sending out of district, and the funding that goes with it.
This is just requesting the spending authority for the 213, 244 for what we paid out to other districts.
Yep, exactly.
So this is adding to our credit card balance.
It's not actual
So
money.
they have the money.
It's not actual money.
That's the
It's
budget
just saying-
process.
Right.
We want the ability to spend the money later of our authority if we need it, because we spent it on the outgoing money that was collected already.
Sorry, you can go to sleep.
No, but if you go down one more,
Yeah.
so the EL one, the English learners,
Yeah.
okay? That is we get funding for them through 4 years. Okay. Now, if they go to year 5, we get partial funding for them, and this is requesting that 5th year through state law that allows us to do that.
So all of these instances are just different calculations on money that we're expending that we haven't currently gotten any authority for. And so it just, it's costs that we've incurred. This is a way for us to, in theory, get it back, at least the authority back. It's up to the board later if they would actually want to tax for it and get the cash back on that.
And those ELs, we can't budget for them because budgeting happens in April, and we have to certify in April. Our testing for them happens the end of April, beginning of May. So we don't have the results back to know who's exited and who hasn't yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I was about to say, that's all, they have to do all tests to be
Right.
classified as an EL student.
So you need a motion? Recommend to approve the request of the school budget review committee for a modified supplemental amount of $58,695 due to an increase in certified enrollment from the prior year.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Ryan. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
So we just need this one. I move to approve the request to the school budget review committee for a modified supplemental amount of $513,244 for open enrolled out students who were not included in the district's previously certified enrollment count.
That number is different than what was on the
Yeah,
agenda.
that number's not right. Sorry about that.
213,000.
213? Sorry.
13,
There we go. Okay.
244.
I mean, we can ask for the
All right,
5.
that's right. I don't like that. Sorry,
I think you
213.
only just changed the 2 to a
I have that corrected now. Thank you.
Motion made by Sue,
For
Second.
213,000.
seconded by Rob. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Last one.
Yep, the last one's for EL program.
Make a recommendation to approve the request of the school budget review committee for a modified supplemental amount of $24,651 related to the EL program for students who have exceeded 5 years of waiting. They're included on the fall 2024 certified enrollment.
Motion made by Tim,
Second.
seconded by Eric. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried 6-0. Next item is the policy committee meeting report.
Last week.
Yes.
Wasn't it just what we, I guess I had to leave a little early, did you go through all policies?
All of them.
Got them all done in 5
We did.
minutes.
We did. I can run through it here real quick. So 50 minutes of our hour-long meeting was around the therapy dog and kind of gaining a better understanding as to what that program's going to look like, how policy is going to be set to govern the handbook, and let admin team manage the handbook itself. Threw a lot of questions at them, just anything that popped into our heads. We just said, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? Some of it they had, great. Some of it they hadn't, wanted to explore that more. Really feel like that particular program is a good option for the district. making sure that we've got a good administrative process in place on how individuals are going to be picked and how they're going to have certain reimbursements made, and all those types of things will be handled in the handbook. I think that we may see, if this implementation goes well and we see a lot of success with it, truthfully, this may end up being a driver for individuals wanting to come and teach in our district to be a part of this program. I think that there's a lot of value in it for staff and students, so really excited about that. You can see the first reading of the policies that we went through, all of the 604. The suggested changes are highlighted on each of those. There wasn't anything that was outside of recommendations from IASB, thank you. My computer battery and my battery are running on low at this time of night. Happy to answer any questions that you guys have on any of those. And then we can move on to the second reading.
I talked with Tara a little bit about this at the delegate assembly, but just as like a heads up, and I know it's state, the verbiage is state run right now, but that at risk, that is verbiage that is going away, so we can just start to change our mindset. It's going to opportunity youth instead of at-risk youth. And when we were running our summer program, there was actually a student that read the article in the paper about what we were doing. She was enrolled in the program, and she asked me, why am I at risk? Right? Like, so it carries a certain type of connotation, certain kind of mindset for them. And so from a whole perspective, and I imagine a lot of the United Way of Such, all the people that kind of deal with this are going towards legislation to get that to move to opportunity youth. So I know, like, theoretically we can't maybe change it because it's all legislative bound right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if that verbiage gets changed to opportunity youth, which I think we probably need to embrace, because at-risk youth is just not the best probably terminology right now to kind of coin them in, so.
So I don't have a lot of understanding of the background on like DMAC courses and course study and stuff like that, but I was apprised to a little bit of discussion in regards to recently. Do any of these policies center around that specifically? So like I look at this online courses, is there anything in here that goes down that path?
There's nothing in the policy that specifically states what may or may not be offered.
Okay. Or what a student can access as a resource, or any limitations on that or anything like that? Okay.
This policy specifically speaks to the fact that they can take online courses.
Okay.
And that is actually now in state law. You cannot limit what modality they take.
Yeah, okay.
How they take it.
Oh, that's good. Good for me to understand. Okay.
But none of those speak directly to the issue with DMAC and concurrent enrollment and how many courses a student can or cannot take.
So
Or
the
what
dual-
we offer in terms of paying for
Yeah,
that.
tracking all that. Dual enrollment, is that only addressing high school to high school? Is that what that's talking about?
Dual enrollment in this is, they may be homeschooled
Okay,
and they come to us for several right, or they might come and take a foreign language course with us. That's what it's speaking to in those policies there.
Which is different than accredited.
yes. So this
All of
is
these
not a
policies are
change.
specifically around homeschool. The dual enrollment.
Is centered around homeschool or is not?
It is not, it does not include students that are part of an accredited non-public.
Got it.
questions, entertain a motion to approve the first reading of those stated policies.
So moved.
Motion made by Eric. Seconded by Ryan. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And the second reading is the 506.2, .2R1, .2E1, .04, and 603.1. These are all presented last month. Happy to answer any questions that you guys have on those. Otherwise, entertain a motion. Motion made by Ryan.
Second.
Seconded by Eric. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. The last one on there is Board Policy 105 revision. This is the service animal policy where we have followed most of the other districts that have an internal program for therapy dogs, and just included the policy in with our service animal policy. You can see the changes there in green, and the request on this in order to get the policy approved so that they can start working through some stuff over break while there's no students in the building would be to waive a second reading on this.
Need a motion?
Yes, please.
Motion to waive the second reading.
And to approve.
Approve,
Approve with the second, yeah, okay. Motion made by Eric, seconded by Sue. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Last item here is the board calendar. Curriculum on Thursday. Finance and HR next week. Looks like technology and policy are just going to meet on Christmas afternoon, Tara's house. Okay.
Count me out.
Any changes that anybody needs to have made to that policy, or I'm sorry, the committee meetings over the course of the next couple weeks?
I just want to highlight on your calendar, January 6th is that board work session with IASB. And we have the Simpson professor coming for the first 25 minutes. And then we will be here at 6.
And is that, are we doing a meal that night for everybody?
Yeah, I'll make something.
Okay,
What time does that start?
5:30.
5:30 on the 6th.
Yep, Monday the 6th. And then our board meeting for January will be the following Monday.
Where is this? On January 6th?
Here.
What is this?
Right here.
A work session. IASB is going to come in and do some continuing education for us. And then we've got a presentation from a professor at Simpson. Any other business? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion made by Ryan,
Second.
seconded by Tim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Delayed.
Motion carries 6-0.
Bye, Rob. Enjoy your 70 degrees.
Have a great night.
Yeah, nice
Bye,
laugh.
guys.
It was evil.